So I'm going to talk about collection of activities with you guys. I have about an hour of presentation, and I'm given 20 minutes. So it's going to go fast. So let's talk about management. And you have management who basically have some desired business outcome that they want to achieve. And those desired business outcomes usually come in the shape of targets of satisfaction, lowering something, increasing something else. And that's their language, and that's how they define it to us. So this management has to deal with the actual organization, and this actual organization is really where how things are done is embodied. So this is where actually how things are done. But the reality is something like that. And the organization actually see it that way, and they live it that way. But if you go down to the actual organization and you talk to the individual, I would argue that from an individual point of view, the way they look at how things happen, they look at it as a collection of activities. Now, if you involve a little bit more of the senior people around, or the subject matter expert, these individuals will tend to think of it as a coordinated set of activities. And they have some kind of that target in mind of management. So, usually we get all these people together and we get involved into what we call identification and discovery. And identification and discovery is usually the first step or the first phase in process improvement or into an improvement project or a program. And traditionally, identification and discovery is based on 3 different types of evidence. So we either have facilitated sessions that are, interviews and workshops, or we have existing documentation, ISO 9000, standard operating procedures, or whatever. And then we have the event logs that exist in the management information system, and for that, you have DISCO. Vote for DISCO. But the traditional way of doing it has been with facilitated session and dealing with existing documentation. And there's not much in terms of tooling to help us do that. It's usually done by the expert, and they're not really well supported. So what I'd like to introduce today is a new tool, which is available in beta right now, which is a discovery accelerator. And the discovery accelerator is meant to support facilitated session, among other things. And the way we support facilitated session, it's with these, we provide you with a board of collection of items, and you can have all these collections. So now I have pre-defined collection of items, of entities, and I don't know if it's too small. But I can also start from a blank board. So if I'm doing an interview or I'm doing a facilitated session, I can have a project. So let me start a project of a board demo, and I'll then add a collection, and let me do an example of a car rental type of thing. So I'm doing this interview, and I'll type this as a collection of activity that I want to capture. So you can imagine somebody on an iPad or iPhone, because this is responsive, where you capture, okay, what is car rental? Well, first you get the request for a car model, and then you get, I should have put my glasses on, you get the check car availability, and then you have the check customer request, thank you, you can do the demo for me, and create rental contract. So, and then I finally assign the car. So that's normally the kind of information you'll gather in those facilitated sessions. They're usually kind of the happy path, the cow path, whatever you want. And then I can go into these activities and look at the W5 perspective of these activities. So who's actually requesting the car? It's the customer. What is it about? It's really about the car model. And then I can populate the information as I'm doing my interviews based on the information that is available from the person that I'm interviewing or this work session that I'm holding. And you can see that as I'm populating things, all those things become available. So I'm going through now check customer record, so it's the rental agent, and I do autofill there and checking for the customer record. And it's at the level of abstraction that people are at ease with talking with. And there's not any enforcement of what these things are. That comes a little bit later when you start working with it. So now I have created a contract. And now you've noticed that as I'm filling the information of these different perspectives around these activities, I'm creating other collections. And so now I have the car. So now I've created collection of entities and collection of actors that are actually participating in there. And I can remove that board. And then I can start structuring that information and say, well, you know what? The car really is this entity that has a car model and car availability and has a rental contract maybe assigned to it. And I'm slowly structuring this information. I'm modeling without quote-unquote modeling. I'm structuring this information. And then I may realize there that, well, maybe I'm missing one activity, and I say, well, there's also the possibility of offering a discount. So I may add this there, and I go and look at filling up the information about that. And I may choose to say that offering a discount is actually something that's discretionary. It's not something we do all the time. And so we'll mark it as discretionary. It's going to be the rental agent, and it's going to be about offering a discount. And it's going to be when the customer is a goal status. So I'm populating these examples, and then I can reorder these items and manipulate all this in a very free flow, structuring the information. So, and it doesn't matter where the information comes from, I can restructure all this, and then I can export all this to use it in my projects. So I've talked about facilitated sessions. So you can imagine somebody on an iPhone doing that, or somebody on an iPad, or somebody on a projector. So we're replacing the brown paper bag or the whiteboard with this. But there's also the side, so I talked about existing documents. I'm going to do a different example now, where I'm going to start from an actual document. So I'm going to do a text demo, and I'm going to switch from the board view to the text view. And then I'm going to either type in my text or copy-paste my text in there, whatever. So I copy-paste a text here that's about business process identification and discovery. So I can highlight my element there. And then at the bottom, I have a collection of markers which I can tag pieces of the text. And as I'm going through, so for example, business process identification and discovery, that's an activity. And I read my text. And as I'm reading the text, I'm making interpretation of that text. And one of the things you'll notice, this is not a structured hierarchical text in the positive grammar. This is a text that goes back and is backward. So now I have BPM practitioner identify as an actor. I'm reading through, and then I go establishing this, and I'm going through, and then I go establishing a context for the improvement project or program, and I may think of this as I'm interpreting this as a goal. So this is a goal, so I'll mark it as a goal, and then I read through, and consists of delivering a clear scope. So maybe I'll identify delivering a clear scope as an activity. So I do so, and then a set of goals. So the set of goals, I may think, well, that's more like an entity. And I'm doing an interpretation of what I'm reading in my own mind of those things. So I'm building this up as I'm reading, and I'm trying to pick up pieces of important information in that text. So I have a process that's an entity. And then I get this process definition and analysis. That's certainly an activity. And then you see, can be deselected. So is that, what is it called in English? Passive or reverse referral? So that's the process that is selected. So now I have selected as an activity. And then I can look at this and say, well, you know what? After what? Defining a clear goal, that's more an actual goal than an activity here in this context of this text. So I'm going to change its type there like this. And at any time, I can switch back to that board mode. And then I have these collection of items that have been identified and are there for me to use, and I can start looking at them, and I say, well, maybe the business process discovery identification is not really an item in my collection, it's really the title of my collection, so I'll just copy and put that up as the title of my collection and remove it from the item list there. So I can work with this, and then I can structure my text, and then I go back and I see, well, I have this set of goals there. And I say, well, set of goal is really a goal. It's not an entity as I first identify it. And you see, I'm retyping it by just dragging and dropping it into this other collection. And I say, these are really sub-goals of my global goal. And I'm restructuring all this information. And then selected is really a bad name for the activity, so I'll rename it in the more proper form of select process. So now I'm renaming this activity as select process, and it's going to be about the entity is going to be about process, and that's the process I've identified in the text. So I'm referring back to it there. So as you can see, I can go back and forth between my text, and as the person of knowledge, the knowledge worker, or your SME, or your business process expert, they interpret that text as they would, and they would highlight. And so you'll notice I can go into a mode where I can double-click on an icon and quickly do many of the same type. And so there's a little bit of efficiency that can be achieved there. And I can just go back and restructure that. And I think you get the whole sense of what the tool can do for you. And it's structuring all this. So I can go through my full text and structure my information. So you're getting people to actually do model, because this isn't really modeling, but indirectly, it's modeling for a business user or business analyst or whatever you want to call these crowd. And then I can actually go and look at exporting all this. So I've talked about identification and discovery. So now that I have this collection of activities identified and somewhat structured, I want to involve some business process experts into this game. And we're going to fall into definition and analysis. So in definition and analysis, at that level, I have my coordinated collection of activities, and I'm trying to generate some business goal or some business outcome. So I may choose to take that information, that collection of activity, and actually use it to prescribe how things should be done. And then I'm going to use BPMN for that, which is a really good language to prescribe how things should be done. Or I can use CMMN, the case management model and notation, which is a brand new thing. It's still in beta, and use it to describe what can be done as opposed to prescribing how it should be done. So we're introducing a couple of products again. So we have the BPMN Visio Modeler and the BPMN Web Modeler. Version 4 actually syncs those two things as one thing. So now I'm in Visio, and so I have a full modeling capability, and I can go do imports of all the standards. Those that know me know that's my game. And a full export of all the different standards. And then I can actually import in my text discovery example that I did for you, and import it in, and I get this queue of activities as everything was linearly structured. And now, as a business process analyst or a business process expert, I can take that as my start canvas and start working it and moving things and saying, well, you know what? Automated discovery and manual discovery, I feel this is really an exclusive choice. You either do automated discovery or you do manual discovery. And then, so the business process expert can go and actually model this in BPMN in this case, and we'll do the modeling from there, and we'll modify this diagram to capture the logic. And he may augment this with activity, he may change a lot of the logic, doing whatever a business process expert can do when they're doing modeling. So I'm just going to do a little bit more of that layouting here. And so now, as the business process analyst, I've created this process model. So I've went from this collection of activities, created this process model, and I may want to validate that this is actually proper BPMN, so we have a full capability of BPMN validation. In this case, it's a very simple thing, so there's no error, syntactical error in there. But I may also be interested in validating not only the syntax and structure of it, but the behavior of it. So we have a full simulation capability in there. But the simulation capability has two facets to it. We have a default type of service, and then we have a full BPSim implementation of the new BPSim standard. And these default services there, what they'll do is they'll parameterize my model. Actually, at this point, I would argue this is just a diagram and a picture and not a model. And it will actually simulate it and run it. So it's injecting 10,000 instances in this, and it's assuming the same likelihood for all the paths. So you can see that I had just about 5,000 instances of that activity. So now, when this is all done, I may choose then to go and comment in and say to my team as the business process expert, say, hey, people that work on the discovery, here's my first draft of what you guys gave me to start with. What do you think about it? And I can then go and save that into a cloud-based repository and make that available for people to consume. So I'll put that in a repository there, cloud-based repository. So one particularity of all this is that all these buttons you see, everything you see there, it's all web services. It's all cloud-based enabled. So now Simon is opening the web modeler. So you see, this is the web modeler. If you haven't noticed, I'm now in Internet Explorer as opposed to Visio. So Simon is there. He goes and pull out that same diagram that I just did, and he gets basically the diagram that I just did. Nothing to applaud, but if you want to participate in a BPMN model interchange, we can have discussions. And then he has access to my commenting, and he can add his own commenting about what we've done, and maybe he'll argue that we don't necessarily need this first activity. And then an exchange between these teams can happen by having the model transparently move in whatever format. We call it the last mile of modeling, is that we're pushing to the end user based on the tools they're used to use or able to use in a very similar fashion. So whether it's in Visio or on the web modeler. So now I'm going to introduce a beta product again, which is the CMMN web modeler. So for that purpose, you'll notice a very similar type of user interface and environment. For that purpose, I'm going to pull out. So we have the full palette of CMMN. So I know this is a little bit over everybody's head because the draft is just out, but it is there. And I can actually have the same kind of basic functionality across the tool. And from there, I can actually go and I'll do an import of the car rental example that I did, the first example that I prepared of the car example. And you see that I have my case plan model that appears there, again, shown as a skew because I didn't have much information. But you notice now that my offer discount is showing there as a discretionary case task. And I have my planning table there. And I can then continue my modeling. I'm adding a milestone in here, which is a CMMN notion of milestone, where I have a car available milestone that is achieved maybe on completion of the car availability, check car availability. So I can carry on doing case modeling in that tool. So I have to go quicker. So that's what we have to offer in terms of definition and analysis. So we do both BPMN and CMMN. You notice we actually do Visio, but all version of Visio, 2003, 7, 10, and 2013. And you need the cheap version. You don't have to be premium of anything. We can also do all this in all the browsers. And really our goal is to offer this uniform user experience in all those platforms. And I guess the best way to show this uniform user experience is to go through all these, so you notice I'm going to go from Visio 2007, 10, 2013, and then I'm going to move into the web browsers. And if you pay attention to the header, you'll notice that I'm actually switching in all those devices here having exactly the same diagramming experience or modeling experience for the user. So then the user can consume it either on a web browser or can consume it right into the environment they're used to, if that's Visio, and without really being too lost. So really what I've tried to present, I know Sandy's going to go wild on bingo now. So really what I've tried to present to you is this uniform user experience in the cloud, supporting the different browsers and the different version of Visio, allowing social creation, social publishing, certainly designed by doers, and supporting what I would say the mainstream standards of the day. And the way we see this all fit is that this is all there available with public APIs and its web services, and then it complements the various platform partners or the people that have more design and deployment tools that are usually more towards the technical individual, and we can push all this information to them and then pull it back through the different standards. And that's what I wanted to talk to you about.